May I ask you for the presentation? Um, Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm honored to attend this event and present Caritas Slovakia anti-trafficking work. Caritas Slovakia Stop Human Trafficking project has been established in 2008. It consists of 3 sub-projects: identification of victims, prevention, and reintegration. More of what we do you can see on the slide. Slovakia is mainly a source and transit country, and most of the Slovaks have been exploited in the UK, then Ireland, Germany, Austria, and Netherlands. The most common forms are forced labor, sex trafficking, forced begging, and forced marriages. 60% of all the Slovak victims are Roma citizens. We have one of the largest Roma populations in Europe, which represents 8 to 9% of all of the country's population. In number, it is around 450,000 people. An estimated 200,000 of Slovakia's Roma live in the isolated and marginalized settlements on the outskirts of towns and villages. They live below the poverty line in terms of education and health status, housing conditions, and access to opportunities in the labor market. Very few continue on the secondary education. With a 99% unemployment rate, social welfare is the only income for many Roma families, which they become dependent on. The situation is then passed from one generation to the next. Roma communities in Slovakia are considered to be a time bomb, a problem that for a long time haven't been dealt with. This became a breeding ground for usury and trafficking that go hand in hand, exploiting the vulnerability of the poorest. For the poorest Roma, a loan from a usurer is often the only way to survive. And the very first loan is the start of the vicious cycle. It is almost impossible for the indebted individuals and their families to free themselves from it. Usury deepens the poverty and causes helplessness and fear. Methods of repaying the payments are often drastic. In many settlements, usurers organize the sale of young girls abroad as a form of repayment of high debts. After the United Kingdom opened its labor market, hundreds of people, mostly Roma, came to the United Kingdom and settled in. Some have become engaged in trafficking people to the UK and exploiting them. They have formed organized crime groups with Pakistani and Indian and set up an illegal, highly lucrative business. Slovakia counts to the top 5 countries of origin of victims trafficked into the UK. Estimates are that there are hundreds, even thousands Slovaks being trafficked in the UK today. Europol last year identified the forced marriage as an emerging phenomenon. The victims are vulnerable women living in desperate conditions in Slovakia. They are told they will work in restaurants or fruit farms in the UK. It's always promises of better life or promises of big and fast money. Instead, women are kept in an apartment until the wedding is arranged, often raped by their husband-to-be and his friends. When the third country nationals get their residency permit, they get rid of them or sell them to slavery. But there are also hundreds of cases of sham marriages or fake marriages reported each year. These mean that brides-to-be agree to wed for money and are considered accomplices. Then in Slovakia they can be prosecuted as smugglers. To understand why the women do it, you only need to go to some of the women's village. It will help you to understand the situation that make women decide to go abroad. They don't fully realize what they have gotten themselves into until they arrive. But to the frustration of ours, some Roma women are so poor that they would rather be exploited abroad than stay at home. This year, there was a large increase in the number of identified Slovak men, victims of forced labor in the UK. 20 men of Slovak nationality have been rescued during the police raid of a number of properties across the city of Peterborough in England, after many years living in slavery. All of them were promised a better life in the UK with well-paid work, but ended up in overcrowded housing and working extremely long hours in a factory or construction site for little or no wages. The traffickers' family kept control over their bank account. Now I would like to share one of my strongest experiences of this year. I couldn't even imagine there might exist a modern slavery of such an extent within my country involving Slovak citizens kept in so tremendous conditions. In April this year, I was called to assist the police from National Unit of Combating Human Trafficking during the operation that had been prepared for several months. It was 6 o'clock in the morning when police raided a Roma household in a small town of Rimavská Sobota. It resulted in rescuing 11 victims from the slavery, which took place in Germany and in Slovakia. I remember staying paralyzed, looking at 11 human beings squeezed in a dark, tiny courtyard shack. They were confused, poorly dressed. There were dogs and rats everywhere. A Roma family of 2 men and 3 women were arrested. They worked as a criminal group. They were picking suitable persons for begging homeless people. They recruited them by promising them a well-paid job at construction sites, good wages, housing and food. They abused people's vulnerable situation, serious health issues and alcohol addiction. For a period of 3 months, repeatedly, they transported them to Germany, where these victims aged from 23 to 82 were forced to beg on the streets. Each was given a dog to better arouse compassion by Germans. They slept by a highway in an open shelter. Back in Slovakia, they kept them in the courtyard and were taking their social and disability benefits. It is the first time that this kind of cooperation between Caritas and police took place in Slovakia, and it seems to be a good ground for the future, quite revolutionary cooperation. Why? What was good about it? That I was able to attend the first interview with the trafficking victim and help to conduct it, which later turned to be very important for the lawyer assigned to the victim. It was a new and useful experience to stand by the survivor from the first stage of an investigation, make him feel comfortable as far as possible, explain him what was going to happen in the interview. Because some investigators, also specifically trained, lack of a common language with the victim and have difficulties in approaching them. Based on this joint operation, we strive for creating a network with professionals working with Roma communities. The goal is to find out more and better understand the situation in Roma communities. Once we want to end modern-day slavery, government officials, police, NGOs, social and community workers all have to work together. As for the strategies, we all know we need a modern response to modern slavery. In our case, within Slovakia, that stands for an inspiring, unique and relevant response. The strategy is simply said to give the relevant information, inspire for action, and give opportunity to do something in everyone's unique way. Caritas Slovakia keeps prevention as the key to combat human trafficking and exploitation. We keep on raising awareness among young people that are the most vulnerable. But on the other side, young people are also those most powerful, so in our efforts we aim at engaging them in our activities by building up the network of volunteers. Our goal is to fight against modern slavery together. We decided to use the power of film, for example, and this year we organized the second edition of the festival called Together Against Human Trafficking. It took place in eastern Slovakia. We picked this region since it is most affected by human trafficking, and most of our victims from last year were recruited here. And on this year's festival, we put a special emphasis on forced labor as one of the current problems most related to the Slovak men. At the same time, this festival was supposed to play an inspiring role. We encouraged young people to organize their own film events. That's why we prepared film packs that included free DVDs with the movies screened at the festival and an event manual, which gave people the tool to start their own awareness-raising event and this way fight against modern slavery. In July, we participated at the most famous multi-genre festival in Slovakia and one of the biggest in Central Europe. One of our activities was to engage people in taking a picture with the message "Stop Human Trafficking" to express our common statement against global enslavement. We encouraged them to share the photo through social media using a hashtag #StopHumanTrafficking, as we know social media are a powerful tool to inspire social good, and we want to build a society that is passionate about making a difference. We have created a video spot out of this for the film festival. Social media are also one of the tools we use for selling the colorful handbags that were made by women survivors in one of our shelters, engaging young people in sharing the post an opportunity to help. At last, I would like to mention an event organized on the occasion of the first International Day of Prayer and Awareness Against Human Trafficking, or so-called Bakita Day. Working for Caritas Slovakia as a church-based organization, we laid a special emphasis on gathering people for a prayer service. This way, we also try to raise awareness on human trafficking of a large number of people and enable them to join it actively, because the event was broadcasted live on the national radio. Through the prayer, we reflected on the stories of our clients who have suffered in slavery. We might say we want to tackle modern-day slavery by shining a light on the horrors of human trafficking, amplifying the voices of the victims, highlighting success stories, and sharing ways that everyone can make a difference. But apart these strategies and projects, what we need the most is to have all our efforts first anchored in the prayer and entrusted to God. Thank you very much.